Welcome to Nature Calls, Conversations from the Hudson Valley. Our team's goal is to present science-based information about gardening and all things nature in New York's Hudson Valley. Hosts Jean and Tim, along with team members Teresa and Linda, are Master Gardener volunteers for New York's Columbia and Greene counties. So if you're interested in gardening or nature, or nuggets of information about what's happening outside your door, settle in. Enjoy the conversation. Whatever the season, we have something to say.
Hi, I'm Tim Kennelty.
And I'm Jean Thomas.
And welcome to Nature Calls, Conversations from the Hudson Valley. Today, we're going to be talking to Pammi Price about getting to know your woodlands. You have woods on your property, don't you, Jean?
I have about an acre of misguided woods.
It's not misguided. I've been there. It's beautiful. And I have some woods too, but a lot of people in the state own just tons and tons of acreage. In fact, Pammi tells us that in the interview that half of the woodland in New York State is owned privately, which I was really interested. It's kind of surprising to me.
And Pammi tells us there's clues in your woodland about past use of land, walls and old trees, and changes in topography. There's a book called Forest Forensics by Tom Wessels, and he teaches a class in, I think it's Vermont, about going through your woods and figuring out what the weather had been over decades.
Yeah, I'd seen some of his webinars, and really that's kind of where Pammi's coming from, is she's really talking about really starting to understand, if you own woodland, how to be a good steward of it, and talks about how to make a stewardship plan.
And what's an MFO?
MFO is a master forest owner, and that's another volunteer group that Cornell has, and you can take training and really help people in making stewardship plans for their woodlands, whether you want to do harvesting of lumber, or whether you want to attract wildlife. It's a really good program. I've taken it.
Pammi's very involved in it.
Yeah, and she's going to tell us all about it. So I think that's going to be a really good interview.
I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, me too. And Heidi Bock is back with Trekking the Trail. She's going to talk about the Ooms Conservation Area in Chatham. It's an amazing place. Have you ever been there?
No, but I know that it's got a lake and you can go fishing there.
It does. It does. You can go fishing.
They tell you how to get a fishing license if you don't have one on their website.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. It also is an amazing place for grassland birds like bobolinks and eastern meadowlark. So it's an amazing bird watching place. It's a beautiful trail, and I think that's really a good one to listen to.
Well, I always wondered what an Ooms was.
What is an Ooms?
People keep talking about the Ooms Conservation Area.
Yes.
It's in Chatham.
Yes.
And I keep hearing people talking about it, and I keep looking, and I keep waiting. It's the name of the people who migrated here from Holland and started a dairy farm and sold this acreage to the Nature Conservancy. So now we all know what an Ooms is. We're also doing a little chat on It's All Greek to Me, and we're talking about binomial nomenclature.
Binomial nomenclature. Wow. What is binomial nomenclature?
It's a tongue twister.
It is. It is.
It means, literally translated, it means two-name naming.
Two-name naming. It's really about Latin names of plants, right?
Yeah, so if your name is Tim Kennelty, a Rosa rugosa would be a rugosa rosa. So it's like family name and individual's name.
Okay. Well, that's going to be really interesting. And the Latin names are really important because common names, usually there's a couple common names for a plant, and a lot of times you get a lot of confusion if you use common names. So that's why we're doing binomial nomenclature, right?
That's right, because a rose is a rose is a rose.
I can't wait to hear you talk about this.
You're going to love it.
Sounds like a lot to listen to in this episode. Can't wait.
I'm looking forward to it.
Welcome to Nature Calls, Conversations from the Hudson Valley. Our topic today is Know Your Woodlands, and we have Pammi Price as our guest. Pammi, could you fill us in on your background and, of course, your title as well?
Hi, Tim. Thanks for inviting me to be part of the program. First of all, my title at CCE Columbia Greene is Environment and Natural Resources Program Coordinator, and I'm the Regional Director of the New York Master Forest Owner Program for the Catskill Lower Hudson region, covering the counties of Columbia, Delaware, Dutchess, Greene, Orange, Otsego, Putnam, Rockland, Schoharie, Sullivan, Ulster, and Westchester. I'm a certified wildlife biologist with an MED in environmental education from Bard Center for Environmental Policy and a BT in wildlife management from SUNY Cobleskill. The tools I use to enhance educational opportunities for everyone include place-based and inquiry-based teaching, curriculum development, and educational approaches that are mindful of access and inclusion for all. I combine my myriad of skills to engage with community members and share my nature knowledge with them. I like to teach about the health benefits of nature and the ways it helps to create community connections, and use citizen science in my education programs, having gained knowledge and insight into the practice of citizen science through being an active member of the Citizen Science Association. I'm also a member of the New York State Outdoor Education Association, where I'm an active member of the Equity, Access, and Inclusion Committee. I'm a member of the national and state chapters of the Wildlife Society, and I'm a board member of the Hudson Center for Community and Environment. Prior to joining the team at Cornell Cooperative Extension, Columbia Green, I was the Education Program Coordinator at Columbia County Soil and Water Conservation District, where I was responsible for education and awareness programs, nature interpretation, and brochure and exhibit development. Previously, I worked as a natural resources specialist, where my duties included performing natural resource inventories and assessments, wetland assessments and delineations, and threatened and endangered species work.
Let's start small. Those of us who own woodlands or woodlots don't always look at them as a resource. I have about an acre of woods on my property, and frankly, I have no idea if they're healthy, if I should try to improve their health, or if such a small wooded area makes a difference in the ecosystem. One of the things you discuss is being present on your land and observing through the seasons. Could you expand on that? I know it's a lot to ask for the first question.
Sure. I always say, think big picture. Survival of every species depends on interactions with other species and the ecosystem services resulting from those interactions. More than half of the woodland in New York State are privately owned by people just like you. Woodlands are essential for people, communities, and society. Woodland owners can be active with trail building, boundary line maintenance, firewood cutting, wildlife habitat improvement, timber harvesting, and more. However, less than 10% of owners have a written plan to describe their resource, identify their opportunities, and set priorities for their effort. Deliberate actions are necessary to optimize your benefits from your woods. How can forest owners help? You can learn to identify the trees, shrubs, and herbaceous plants in your woodlands and try to conserve native trees and plants. Learn to recognize invasive or interfering species and take steps to manage and control their spread and reduce impacts on native species. You can also work on reducing fragmentation. Worldwide biodiversity is declining, so private landowners are key to protecting and enhancing biodiversity.
Yeah, so I have some woodlands on my property, and I'm just wondering, what if I'm walking around out there and I find some kind of strange objects or mysterious anomalies like foundations or sections of abandoned trails or piles of glass and metal? Where would I go to find out, like, what's going on with this? Does this indicate something about the history of my property?
That's all about forest forensics. There are many clues in the forest that can tell us about the past uses of the land. Some of these clues are obvious, while others are more hidden or cryptic. The forests we see today have been influenced in many ways by what has happened in the past, and clues to whether those unique features and mysterious anomalies you are seeing are natural or human-caused can be found if you know how to look at them. Using clues hidden in the landscape, a stone wall, old trees, or topography, it's often possible to figure out what a patch of forest used to look like 100 years ago.
Okay, Pammi, what are some of the clues?
For example, if you find stone walls, it can be a sure sign that the forest was once a pasture or cultivated field. Since deforestation had greatly depleted wood stocks, farmers were forced to build fences from field stones. Another thing you might find is wolf trees, which are also called pasture trees. They're easiest to spot in winter. Look for an old, large tree with thick limbs growing lower on the trunk. Wolf trees are evidence that the forest was once a livestock pasture. Farmers would leave trees in livestock fields to provide shade for the animals. If you find raised earthwork banks, often accompanied by a ditch, it may be a clue to how a wood was once divided up between different landowners. You might also find low-level walls between tree trunks. These may be the remains of old field boundaries, meaning that the wood was once pasture or agricultural land. Further clues may be present in undulating ground known as ridge and furrow, which was created by plows pulled turning soil to one side, making long, low banks. Clues to previous industrial sites include remains of stone buildings, cobbled or paved trackways, piles of spoil or slag, and abandoned machinery. Undulating or pitted ground may also be evidence of quarrying.
I hear a lot about historic storms. What's the story there?
If you find a fallen tree in the woods, you can figure out what type of storm felled it, unless it was caused by a tornado, which fells trees in all directions. In New England, the direction of the wind is highly seasonal. In spring and summer, the strongest winds are generated by thunderstorms from the west, so the fallen trees will point east. These spring and summer storms also create microbursts, or downward drafts of air that topple trees in a clear semicircle, pointing from northeast to southeast. A tree pointing towards the south or west indicates it was felled by a nor'easter storm, whose winds come from the northeast, and down trees pointing northwest were downed by a hurricane. Massive lone boulders in the forest are called glacial erratics, and they're evidence of New England's icy past. The Laurentide ice sheet reached its maximum extent about 18,000 years ago, after which the glacier slowly receded. As these glaciers flowed slowly downhill, they carved off huge chunks from the underlying bedrock and moved them many hundreds of miles. During this journey, the boulders became rounder and smoother, much like riverstone. You can also see other signs of glaciers in the forest. If you find a patch of smooth, exposed bedrock, look for parallel grooves in the rock face. Both the smooth surface of the rock and these marks are evidence of a glacier.
That's great. So far, we've learned a little bit about what's actually growing in our woods and maybe a little about the history of the property. How do we decide what to do now?
The first step might be to enlist the help of a master forest owner volunteer. Master forest owners are landowners like you who are here to help you learn how to take care of your woods. They're trained in forest ecology, wildlife, silviculture, and forest economics topics, which they share during woods walks with landowners. In addition to their training, master forest owners have hands-on experience caring for their own woodlands. These volunteers offer free woods walks where they can provide suggestions on caring for your woods and resources to help you do so. A MFO will schedule a visit to your property where they will take a walk with you to learn about your forest. The MFO will talk with you about your priorities for your woodlands, such as attracting wildlife to your woods, building trails on your land, growing shade crops such as mushrooms, ginseng, and firewood, and about learning how to keep your woods healthy.
So what are the next steps?
The next step is to create a forest stewardship plan. A forest stewardship plan can help you decide on your goals for sustainable forest management. Objectives might include timber management, wildlife habitat enhancement, recreational use, and soil and water protection. You can enhance wildlife habitat. Ways to enhance wildlife habitat include retaining or adding evergreens, keeping dead wood, brush piles, logs, stumps, and cut treetops, keeping rock piles and rock walls, maintaining cavity trees and snags, creating shrub patches, increasing plant diversity, and something that is very important to me, protecting forested wetlands, seeps, and vernal pools. You can also think about forest gardening, also known as agroforestry. These edible woody landscapes are good for people and wildlife. They can provide food, help in habitat creation, provide a diversity of trees, shrubs, and herbs, and can help attract wildlife. Agroforestry is a sustainable, diverse, and healthy way to manage forested lands through woodlot management and raising shade-grown crops, including mushrooms, ginseng, and maple syrup. In fact, indigenous people have been growing forest crops for thousands of years on this very land. You probably won't earn a generous income through forest farming, but the rewards include being outdoors, learning new things, and maintaining your healthy forest system. The bottom line is sustainable forest management helps us conserve energy, conserve soil, protect water quality, protect air quality, and naturally control pests.
Can you provide an example for us?
An example of sustainable forest management is a multifunction riparian buffer. A riparian forest buffer is a vegetated transitional area between the land and a stream planted with trees, shrubs, and other perennials. A multifunction riparian buffer is an alternative approach to riparian buffer best management practices using native, perennial, and often edible species, including nuts, berries, and fruit trees. Multifunction riparian buffers may also include native flowers. In addition, multifunction riparian buffers create healthy habitats for native terrestrial and aquatic wildlife species.
So, Pammi, if I wanted to become a master forest owner, what are the steps? What would I do if I wanted to do that?
First of all, you don't need to be a woodland owner, but you must have an interest in woodlands and volunteering to help others. Prior to applying, you contact the regional director in your area to introduce yourself and let them know you're interested in becoming an MFO. You will also meet with an MFO volunteer or attend a woods walk with them to see what an MFO volunteer does. Then you go to the website and fill out the application. Once you are accepted, you will be notified to make the payment for training, and you can start reviewing webinars in preparation for the training. Training for the 2022 cohort will be virtual on Wednesday nights and run from March 23rd to May 4th, with an additional field session after the end of the virtual training sessions. Once you complete the training and are officially an MFO volunteer, we ask that you contact and meet within 12 months of your training at least 5 neighboring woodland owners, one-to-one, in their woodlands to promote wise forest management and stewardship.
Okay, Pammi, what if all I want to do is keep my woodlands healthy to encourage native plants? Are there groups I can look to for help specifically to that? And I've been hearing about TNC scorecard tools. First of all, what is TNC and what's a scorecard tool?
Sure. There are many groups and online resources to help. Some of the groups you can become involved in include the New York Forest Owners Association, Catskill Forest Association, Watershed Agricultural Council, and Women Owning Woods, Catskill Hudson Valley. Online resources include Forest Connect by Cornell University. This website connects woodland owners to the knowledge and resources needed to ensure sustainable production and ecological function on private woodlands. Another resource for forest owners is My Woodlot, a community of folks who love the outdoors and want to help each other. My Woodlot provides outdoor activity ideas, advice on land ownership, and ways to connect with other landowners through their forums. Another useful resource is the In These Woods letter series from CCE Columbia Green, a monthly letter series for all those who interact with the woods. Whether you manage forests or appreciate them from a distance, you can learn all about agroforestry, forest ecology, wildlife, recreation, timber management, and more. Sign up on the CCE website to enjoy, study, and sustainably manage the woods around you. The TNC scorecard tool is Keep Forests Healthy, a tool to assess forest resilience, health, and productivity. It's a document developed by Cornell Cooperative Extension, the Northern Institute of Applied Climate Science, and the Nature Conservancy, Central and Western New York chapter, to enable landowners to assess how their forests may be affected by changing climate conditions. This evaluation can help landowners identify potential risks and highlight management options that may increase the ability of a forest to cope with the pressures of changing conditions. The assessment identifies 16 characteristics that may increase or decrease the risk of harm to a forest in a changing climate, which can then be discussed with a professional to plan forest management activities.
And what does the TNC stand for?
The TNC is the Nature Conservancy.
Thank you.
I'm sorry.
No, I'm a bug about acronyms and such.
But that is very cool that you have a tool to do that. It's something that I feel like more people should know about. I am a risk-averse person. Gene, you know this. I'm a worrier. So there are probably some risks in kind of getting in there and harvesting woodlands and things like that. What cautions do you have for folks?
The most important thing is to always think about personal safety and the safety of those around you. Remember, you're outdoors, so dress appropriately, use the correct tools, learn how to use all your tools properly and safely. Be aware of signs of what's happening in the area, such as hunting seasons or impending storms. Know what animals are threats and know what to do if you get in a situation with one of those animals. And always let someone know when you are going out to work on the land and make a plan to contact them when you return so they know to send help if you don't check back in.
Well, Pammi, that's a lot to think about. Tim now knows not to wear his flip-flops into the woods.
And I need to know what to do when those animals attack too, right?
The bear that lives on his deck is one of his issues. Okay, well, as always, thank you for visiting with us.
Thank you.
You're listening to Nature Calls, conversations from the Hudson Valley. Stay tuned for Trekking the Trails.
Welcome back to Trekking the Trails. I'm Heidi Bock with the Columbia Land Conservancy, and this month we'll be visiting Ooms Conservation Area, a 180-acre property on Rock City Road in Chatham. This site has nearly 3 miles of trails that take you through meadows and grassland, around Sutherland Pond, and into a mixed forest. If you head out on the trails this month, you may notice several feathered friends perched in the trees or shrubs while they snack on seeds and berries. This is a great time of year to learn about our common resident birds, and Ooms offers a variety of habitats to visit. For this trek, we'll walk along the pond loop. Here you will likely see birds flitting and flying around on a sunny day, even if it's cold. The advantage of getting out, or setting up feeders at home, and learning about birds this time of year is there are far fewer around, so you can become quite good at identifying these, and then, when the migrating birds come back this spring, you'll be able to tell them apart. There are 4 quick tips for making visually learning birds easy and fun. More information about how to put these tips into practice can be found at allaboutbirds.org, and we'll link to that in the show notes. To get started, when you see a bird, you want to look for the following things. First is size and shape. Comparing unknown birds to ones you know can help you judge their size. For example, is it bigger or smaller than a robin, which is about 8 to 10 inches? This can help narrow down the choices. Similarly with shape, Look at things like the bill and tail to gather more information. Next, you're going to look at the color or pattern. The main colors are going to get you started with your identification. There's not a lot of bright, flashy colors this time of year, so any small bits of color or pattern can help with identification. Look for their behavior. For this, you'll need to watch birds for a while to become accustomed to their habits, but many birds have very specific behaviors, so this can help to spot birds from far away. Next is habitat. Knowing what types of places birds tend to prefer will help narrow down what you are seeing. Range maps and time of year help with your identification as well. As we walk along the pond trail, look for these birds that are common at Ooms, and using these tips, see if you can identify them confidently. First, we'll look for the goldfinch. These are small birds about half the size of a robin, at 4 to 5 inches. They have a small head, long wings, and a short, notched tail. They're the only finch that molts its body feathers twice a year, and their winter color is pretty drab, nearly solid brown with a blackish striped wing. They are very acrobatic, often seen clinging to weeds, picking at seed heads, often hanging out in uncut fields and floodplains. Next, we'll look for the dark-eyed junco. These medium-sized sparrows are about 5.5 to 6.5 inches long. They have a round head, short bill, and long tail. Their color can vary regionally, but around here they're generally dark gray with a white belly and prominent white outer tail feathers. They spend much of their time on the ground, hopping around the base of trees and shrubs, along the edge of woods, in fields, and often in your backyard. Next, we'll look for the tufted titmouse, which is similar in size to the junco, but have a large head with a pointed crest that they can raise and lower on their head. They are a silvery gray color and have a thick neck and full body. The belly is white with rusty or peach coloring along the sides. They too are very acrobatic foragers and have a fluttery flight. They are common in woodlands and will stash seeds in tree bark. Cedar waxwings are a medium-sized bird, a little smaller than a robin, at 5.5 to 6.5 inches long. They have a large head with a very prominent crest. They have a short neck, wide bill, and short tail. These sleek-looking birds are pale brown on the head and chest with a pale yellow belly. They have gray wings and a tail with yellow tips at the end. Next, we'll look for the red-bellied woodpecker. This is a medium-sized woodpecker, a little larger than a robin, but smaller than a crow. They are black and white striped, with a sleek red cap and/or nape, with white patches near their wingtips when flying, often seen along branches and trunks of trees picking at bark. They are common in woodlands with an undulating flight pattern. When you're out, a great way to keep track of the birds you're seeing and to help the Columbia Land Conservancy learn more about our conservation areas is by collecting data in eBird. eBird is a community science application that compiles all the data collected and helps conservation organizations make informed decisions for managing the land. All of our public conservation areas are hotspots in eBird, so you can contribute directly to the data for those sites. More information about this will be in the show notes. For more than 30 years, the Columbia Land Conservancy has worked to inspire our community to more deeply connect with, respect, and protect the natural world. We collaborate with partners and volunteers to improve the health of the land and ensure a thriving farm community, create environmental education opportunities, provide access to outdoor experiences, and support municipal leaders in conservation-minded decision-making. To learn more, visit clctrust.org or find us on Facebook and Instagram.
You're listening to Nature Calls, conversations from the Hudson Valley. Stay tuned for It's All Greek to Me.
Hi, this is Jean Thomas again, and here we are at It's All Greek to Me. Our topics revolve around the language quirks of the botanical world. Acronyms and gardener jargon and the terrifying use of Latin are the usual subjects. When I discuss the Latin terminology, I'm breaking down the origins of the actual words used to describe the plants, and sometimes to describe the animals and insects that compete for them. So, it's time for a basic primer about binomial nomenclature. Yep, I'm going to use Latin to explain Latin. And I'm throwing in a little history lesson as a bonus. Here goes. According to Botanica.com, Carl Linnaeus lived from 1707 to 1778, so that included most of the 18th century. This was a time of great scientific exploration, and Linnaeus devised the system of naming plants with two names, kind of like people. The whole system goes through ever-shrinking categories, from kingdom to phylum to class, to family to genus to species. We're interested in these last two. A plant's name is the genus name, followed by the species name. So, in a person, the equivalent to genus is family name, and the equivalent to species is first name. If a plant is called Rosa rugosa, it's the equivalent to a person's name of Smith, John. Of course, it can get more detailed, too. There are the names of varieties and hybrids. These are usually the result of human tinkering. So if there were a type of Rosa rugosa that was hybridized and named after somebody famous, it might be called Rosa rugosa Betty Boop. The human equivalent would be something like Smith John Jr. A lot of times, the variety or hybrid name is in Latin, so the fun continues. The phrase binomial nomenclature breaks down like this. Bi meaning two, plus nomial meaning of names is added to nomen meaning names again, plus clature meaning call out, or two-named name-calling. It's part of the system called taxonomy, universally used by scientists to describe any known living thing, whether animal or vegetable. Now, my butterfly of a brain started to wonder if minerals have binomial nomenclature. I went to find out. What I found out was this. Living things are described according to their reproductive systems. Minerals don't have reproductive systems, so they're left out. Also, because they aren't living things. I also found out that Linnaeus actually tried to include minerals back in the day with a theory that salty fluids inseminated rocks. That theory never really got popular. This is the most basic description of a very complicated system, taxonomy. From taxis, arrangement, plus nami, method, equals a system of classification. The actual word taxonomy was built from these stepping stones by the French originally, who spell the word ending in IE, not Y. So you can impress your friends with that little tidbit. Well, we've just reviewed the system called taxonomy, and the plant naming part that we will encounter most often. Once in a while, I'll refresh your memory as we plunge into the mysteries of the formal names of our most familiar garden friends and foes. Some skeptics will wonder why we're getting so uppity about names anyway. This is why. Common names are notoriously fickle. A Michaelmas daisy in England is an aster here. A robin in England is not at all related to our native robin. Ours is in the thrush family, theirs isn't. But you see how using the formal name means we're all talking about the same plant or animal. Americans think of corn as a particular vegetable, but the English are talking about grain, usually wheat, when they say corn. Remember, it wasn't until the 1500s that the explorers brought corn to Europe. They call corn maize or sweet corn. So if I say Zea maize, I mean plants of the genus Zea, borrowing the Greek name for another grain, go figure, and species maize from the indigenous word mahia. When I say it to any scientist anywhere in the world, it describes the same plant, no confusion. Until next time, or Tempest, this is Jean Thomas.
That concludes another episode of Nature Calls, Conversations from the Hudson Valley. We would like to thank Sandra Linnell and Devin Connolly from Cornell Cooperative Extension of Columbia and Greene Counties for production support. And a special thank you to our listeners for joining us on this episode of Nature Calls, Conversations from the Hudson Valley. You can find links to any of the topics mentioned in this episode at our website at ccecolumbiagreen.org. Comments and suggestions for future topics may be directed to us at colgremg@cornell.edu or on the CCE Master Gardener Volunteers of Columbia and Greene Counties Facebook page. For more information about Cornell Cooperative Extension of Columbia and Greene counties, visit our website at ccecolumbiagreen.org or visit us in Hudson or in Acre. Cornell Cooperative Extension provides equal programming and employment opportunities